I didn't plan to snap that day. Honestly, I'm the kind of guy who keeps his head down, gets his work done, and avoids conflict like it's a second job I never applied for. I don't raise my voice, I don't pick fights. Most days I barely pick opinions. But when you spend long enough being the reliable one, people start treating your silence like permission. And that morning, when my coworker Madison walked up to my desk with that bright, practiced smile she uses to soften bad intentions, I felt something in me tighten, like a thread pulled too many times. She rested her elbows on my cubicle wall and said, "Hey, can you cover my shift tomorrow?" Something came up. Her voice was sweet enough that if I didn't already know her, I might have believed she meant it. But Madison never meant anything unless it benefited her, and I'd covered for her 3 times in the last 2 months, which she conveniently forgot every time I reminded her. I told her no. Simple, calm, final. Her smile froze at the edges like wet paint in the cold, and that should have been the end of it. The truth is, I never liked saying no to people, especially coworkers. I grew up believing that good men carry weight for the team. My father used to say, if you can do something in 10 minutes, do it, because someone else might need 30. That stuck with me, maybe too well. In my first year at the company, it made me look dependable. In my third year, indispensable. By the 5th year, it made me a target. Madison learned early that I was the guy who filled silence with work, so she kept handing me silence, and I kept filling it, until today. She blinked at me, confused as if the word no had broken some unspoken deal only she believed we had. "What do you mean you can't?" she asked, voice dropping into that soft, guilt-weaving tone she used on our manager whenever she wanted a deadline extended. "I mean I can't," I repeated. "I've already made plans." She scoffed like my plans were fictional. "Come on. It's just one shift." "Exactly," I said. "The same one shift you've asked me to cover again and again." Her expression flickered. Annoyance, surprise, something sharper underneath. Then her lips curled into a thin, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Fine. Whatever. I'll figure it out." But the way she said it told me she wasn't done. Not even close. The rest of the morning dragged by with an unusual heaviness. Madison didn't speak to me, which wasn't unusual in itself. But the way she didn't speak to me was. It was the kind of silence someone uses to rehearse their revenge. I felt her eyes on me when she passed the copier. I caught her whispering to another coworker, their glances flicking toward me and then away. I kept my head down and worked. It's what I always do. Still, I felt the pressure building, quiet, slow, thick as humidity before a storm. Around noon, I stepped into the break room to refill my coffee. Madison was at the counter stirring tea like she was punishing it for existing. She didn't look at me when I walked in. "You know," she said, still staring at her cup, "some people at this company know how to be team players." I didn't answer immediately. I wasn't sure if she wanted a fight or an audience. "I'm a team player," I finally said, "just not your personal safety net." Her jaw tightened, and for a second, just a second, I saw something vindictive flash in her eyes. Then she smiled again, that same brittle, sugary curve. "We'll see," she murmured, brushing past me. I went back to my desk uneasy. The kind of uneasy you feel when you realize you've locked eyes with a predator you didn't think could bite. I pushed through the rest of the day, did my tasks, answered emails, avoided the temptation to check whether Madison was looking in my direction again. At 5:03 p.m., people started heading out. Chairs pushed back, computers shut down, the usual exodus. I stayed 3 minutes later to finish a spreadsheet formula that was bothering me. Those 3 minutes changed everything. When I finally stood up and reached for my bag, I noticed something sitting on my desk that hadn't been there before. A thick folder, not printed reports. My job rarely needed those. This was a project binder, our big project binder, the one Madison had been assigned last quarter and bragged loudly about in every team meeting. My confusion lasted exactly one breath. Inside the binder was a sticky note. "Since you're so good at helping," it read in her sharp handwriting, You can handle this. It's due Monday. Monday. That was 3 days away. 3 days for a workload that normally took a full week or more. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was disbelief. A quiet, stunned disbelief. The kind you feel when someone slashes your tires and smiles about it. My second reaction was the slow, rising heat of humiliation. Not because of the work itself, but because she assumed I'd roll over and do it. She assumed I'd clean up her mess because I always had. She assumed my no meant nothing. She assumed wrong. I looked around the office, hoping she might still be nearby. But her desk was empty, her monitor off, her chair pulled in neatly. Gone. And she'd timed it perfectly so I wouldn't catch her in the act. I sat back down, opened the binder, and felt the weight of every page like a hand pressing against my chest. Graphs, drafts, dependencies, vendor notes, everything half-finished, everything sloppy, everything obviously thrown together in a hurry. She dumped the entire project on me, not a shift, not a task, the whole damn thing. For the first time in years, I felt something crack. Not break, not snap, but crack. Like a warning from somewhere deep inside me. I closed the binder, exhaled once through my nose, and sat in total silence. Not defeated, not overwhelmed. Just done. Done playing the part she cast me in. Done being the guy who absorbs everyone else's weight. Done letting people write stories where I'm the supporting character. I picked up the binder again, and this time I didn't feel dread. I felt clarity. If Madison wanted to turn this into a war, she really should have checked whether I was the type of man who fights quietly. Because quiet fighters don't swing wildly. They aim. I stared at that binder for a long time before I moved. The office was empty enough that I could hear the air conditioner humming in the ceiling, that low mechanical sigh that always made late nights feel lonelier. Somewhere down the hall, a printer woke up and spat out a forgotten document, and then went quiet again. It felt like the whole floor was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do. The old version of me would have sighed, rolled up his sleeves and just taken it, told himself it was for the team, told himself that if the project failed, the whole department would look bad, told himself Madison probably really did have something important happening this weekend. The old version of me used excuses and empathy as duct tape, wrapping them around other people's messes until they looked like his responsibility. I wasn't that guy anymore, or at least I decided I wasn't going to be tonight. The first thing I did was simple. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the sticky note on the binder, then a photo of the project label with her name next to owner, then the timestamp on my computer screen. It wasn't dramatic, it was just proof. Proof of the moment she decided my boundaries meant nothing. Then I called her. She didn't pick up. It rang until it went to voicemail, her cheerful recorded voice telling me to leave something fun. I hung up without saying a word. I tried again. Same thing. I stared at her name on the screen for a moment, then sent a text. Found the binder on my desk. Your project. Due Monday. Call me. The little delivered popped up. No dots, no response. I sat back, folded my hands, and just let the anger come. Not the loud, explosive kind. The quiet, dense kind that sits in your chest and makes everything feel heavier. Anger at the way she'd smiled at me in the break room while already planning to stab me in the back. Anger at myself for training everyone around me to think I'd always clean up without complaining. I didn't touch the binder for the next 10 minutes. Instead, I opened my email. Subject line, clarification on project ownership and status. I typed out a short, factual message to our manager, Alex, CCing the team inbox. Hi, Alex. I found the Q3 vendor analysis binder on my desk after hours, with a note from Madison asking me to handle it for Monday. To my knowledge, she is the assigned owner on this project. I want to confirm expectations for my role here before proceeding, especially given the current timeline. Happy to discuss Monday morning, but didn't want there to be confusion. Grant. I didn't editorialize. I didn't accuse. I just laid out what happened and dropped it somewhere official. If Madison wanted to play games, she'd have to do it in front of an audience this time. I hit send at 5:26 p.m. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Madison, wow, really? Running to teacher already? I thought you said you weren't my babysitter. My jaw tightened. Me, I'm confirming responsibilities. Project is due Monday. It was on your desk this morning. It was on mine after you left. I won't take surprise ownership without clarity. The dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Madison, you're overreacting. You're better at this stuff anyway. I'm swamped with other tasks. Just do it. We'll both look good. There it was. The entitlement, the assumption, the way she wrote we when she really meant me. Me. No, I can assist, but I won't own it. If Alex reassigns it, that's his call. But I won't let you dump it on me without a conversation. The dots vanished and never came back. I slipped my phone into my pocket and finally opened the binder for real. The deeper I went, the worse it looked. Half the vendor quotes were missing. The comparative analysis section was blank. The draft presentation was a skeleton with no muscle. She hadn't just dropped work on me. She'd dropped a bomb and assumed I'd absorb the blast. For a second, I seriously considered just closing everything and walking out. Let the whole thing burn, let the pieces fall where they may, and when Monday came, tell Alex exactly what happened and point to my email. But that wasn't just Madison's reputation on the line. The project had client eyes on it. If it went sideways, it wouldn't just be her looking bad. It would be all of us. That's what made me the angriest, I think. She wasn't just willing to sacrifice my weekend. She was willing to gamble the whole team's credibility so she wouldn't have to sweat. So I made a decision. I pulled the binder closer, opened a fresh notepad, and started mapping out what could realistically be done in 3 days. Not perfect, not beautiful, but solid enough to stand up in a meeting. At the same time, I opened a blank document on my screen and titled it Q3 Accountability Notes. Every time I fixed something obviously left undone, I noted it. Vendor B. No quote requested. Completed outreach. 7:14 p.m. Friday. Slides 5-7. Missing cost breakdown. Created draft based on latest numbers. Comparative risk section empty. Built framework from scratch. Not because I wanted to brag later, not because I needed a gold star, but because I was done letting my work disappear under someone else's name. By 8 p.m., the building was quiet enough that my keyboard sounded loud. I ordered cheap takeout to the office and ate it at my desk, staring at the glowing spreadsheet cells until they stopped swimming. My eyes burned, my back ached. The rational part of me kept whispering that I should have just left. Let Madison deal with the wreckage she created. But somewhere deeper, another part of me, the tired, hardening part, had a different idea. Get the project into a shape that can't be ignored. Then make sure nobody can pretend they don't know who did it. Around 9:30, my phone buzzed again. Madison, you're not seriously still there working on it, are you? I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Me. I am. I'm also documenting every change I make. We'll walk Alex through it on Monday. This time, there were no dots at all. By 11:15, my brain felt like wet concrete. I'd shored up the worst gaps, set reminders to follow up with 2 vendors first thing Saturday morning, and built a rough but functional version of the presentation outline. It wasn't pretty, but it was real, work you could point at. I shut down my monitor, left the binder locked in my drawer, and walked out to the parking lot. The air outside was cool enough to sting my lungs a little. I sat in my car for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. That night, I realized something I probably should have understood years ago. I'd been saving people who never wanted saving. Just cover. I drove home without the usual background noise in my head. No justifications, no mental gymnastics to explain why Madison didn't mean it like that. She knew exactly what she was doing. The difference now was that I finally knew what I was going to do. When I unlocked my apartment door, I didn't collapse on the couch. I went straight to my desk, opened my personal laptop, and backed up everything I'd done. Notes, emails, timestamps, screenshots of texts. Not to threaten anyone, just to protect myself from the moment this inevitably got messy. Because deep down, I already understood something I hadn't admitted yet. But that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of stress, at least not the sharp kind. It was more like my brain stayed in record mode, replaying the timeline, rewinding the decisions, marking the moments where Madison made her choices and the moments where I made mine. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I realized I wasn't anxious anymore. I felt precise, like every emotion had drained through a filter, leaving only the cold parts that actually get things done. By morning, I had a plan. I started with the vendors. 2 of them were in different time zones, which worked in my favor. One responded within 15 minutes with the missing quote. The other apologized for the delayed reply and sent a full updated file. I saved everything, timestamped it, added it to the project folder, documented what time the requests had originally been sent out. Never, according to the outbox. Madison hadn't even tried. By 9:45 a.m., I'd more done in 3 hours than she'd done in 3 weeks. But the real test was coming Monday, and I knew she wouldn't walk in quietly. Saturday afternoon, I got a text from her. Please don't make this dramatic. We can just present it together. Together. Like a duet. Like she hadn't dropped the entire weight on my desk and sprinted it out the door. I didn't answer. Instead, I kept working. Cleaned up the cost analysis. Rebuilt the risk slides. Reworked the vendor comparison chart because her numbers were off by margins that could sink a presentation. Every fix I made revealed another place she'd cut corners. She hadn't just procrastinated, she'd actively avoided the work. By Sunday morning, the project looked solid. Not perfect, not polished, but functional. Something the team could stand behind if they didn't look too closely at who actually built it. And I was fine with that. My goal wasn't glory. My goal was truth. Sunday night, as I was double-checking the box of files I'd print Monday morning, I realized something else. Madison still hadn't apologized. Not once. She didn't feel guilty. She felt exposed. She knew I wasn't rolling over this time, and that terrified her far more than the idea of losing the project. Monday arrived with that strange, jittery quiet offices get right before something explodes. People greeted each other, but softer. Chairs rolled, keyboards clicked, coffee machines hissed. Madison walked in 20 minutes late, holding an iced latte like she'd won it in a raffle. She wore a bright coral blazer, her presentation color, the one she used any time she wanted attention. She didn't look at me when she passed my desk. Not a nod, not a twitch of acknowledgement. Nothing. That was good. It meant she didn't know where I stood. People like Madison are most dangerous when they think they understand you. At 10 a.m., Alex called us into the conference room for the project review. Our team filled in slowly, the air tightening as people settled. The projector hummed to life. Madison sat 2 chairs away from me, her posture perfect, her smile rehearsed. All right, Alex said, folding his hands on the table. Let's walk through the Q3 vendor analysis. Madison, you were lead on this. Grant, you assisted. Let's begin. She stood, smoothed her hair, and stepped to the front like she was about to take a victory lap. Thank you, Alex, she started brightly. This quarter's analysis was a challenge, but a rewarding one. Grant and I worked hard to synthesize. Alex, I said quietly, not raising my voice, before we go further, I think you should see something. Madison froze. Her hand tightened around the clicker. Her smile flickered. I slid a printed packet across the table. Alex took it, eyebrows lifting as he scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. It was everything. Timestamps. Photos of the binder dropped on my desk. Emails. Messages. Logs of every fix I made. A clear, unembellished timeline from Friday evening to Sunday night. No accusations. Just facts. Madison's voice cracked. Alex, I don't know what this is. This is ridiculous. He's twisting things. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I kept my eyes on Alex. I found the binder on my desk Friday at 5:03, I said. Madison had not completed the project. I documented everything I did because I didn't want any confusion about who handled what. The silence that fell wasn't awkward. It was surgical. Madison tried again, her voice pitching high. I asked him to help, not to act like I abandoned. You didn't ask, I said evenly. You left it and walked out. You refused to answer calls. And you told me I'll just do it. I have the messages. Alex closed the packet. He leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose in a way I'd never heard from him before. Madison, he said quietly, I need you to step outside for a moment. Her face strained. Alex, wait. Outside, he repeated, firmer. She set the clicker down, hands trembling, and stepped out of the room. Her heels clicked down the hall, each tap sharper than the last. When the door closed, Alex rubbed his forehead and turned to me. You did good work, he said. Damn good. And, Grant, I'm going to be honest. This project wasn't just a project. I looked up. This was part of an internal restructuring review, he continued. Leadership needed to see who could handle complex ownership, who could lead. Madison was the name we were evaluating. The room seemed to tilt for a second, not from shock, but from the sheer accuracy of the moment. She hadn't just dumped her work on me, she'd dumped her promotion on me. And now, Alex said softly, I need to adjust that evaluation. The door opened. Madison stood there, eyes red, jaw trembling, mascara smudging at the corners. I didn't, she started, but Alex held up a hand, not to silence her, to stop her from burying herself even deeper. We'll finish this later, he said. For now, Grant will present. Her mouth fell open in outrage. This is insane. He's making me look... Again, Alex didn't raise his voice. You did that yourself. Madison stood frozen, stunned into silence. I passed her without looking at her and walked to the front of the room. The projector light warmed the side of my face. I clicked to the first slide. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. I took a breath, steady and unshakable, and began the presentation. They thought I wouldn't show my teeth. They were wrong. When I finished the presentation, the room didn't erupt with applause or compliments. That's not how real offices work. Instead, there was something better. Quiet. The kind of quiet where people look at each other with that small, tight nod that means, yes, that's the person who did the work. It was the closest thing to recognition I'd gotten in years, and it didn't need to be loud. Alex thanked everyone and dismissed the team. People filtered out, slowly, giving me glances I wasn't used to. Respectful, curious, a little surprised. A couple of them touched my shoulder on the way out. No big words, just gestures. Madison was nowhere to be seen. She had slipped out the moment she realized the room wasn't watching her anymore. When the door finally shut and the room emptied to just me and the projector, cooling in soft pops, Alex turned to me. Grant, he said, I need a word. For a second I wondered if there was a catch, but then he gestured to the chair next to him, not across from him, and my shoulders loosened just a little. He didn't drag it out. Leadership reviewed your notes, he said. Everything was clear, transparent, professional. No exaggeration, no drama. You handled a crisis that wasn't your fault. I waited. He never complimented carelessly. And we want you leading the vendor team next quarter. I blinked once, slowly. Lead? As in supervise? As in manage, he clarified. Budget authority? Timeline control? The works. Officially. A small hum filled my ears, not adrenaline, not shock. Just clarity settling into place, the final puzzle piece finding its corner. I'd done the work for years without the title. Now the title was catching up. I'll take it, I said simply. He nodded once. Good. HR will reach out. And Grant, what you did this weekend, that's the kind of ownership we need more of. I left the conference room with my chest lighter, but my steps steady. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt aligned, like I'd finally stopped standing in my own shadow. At my desk, the binder still sat where I'd left it. I slid it into the outgoing box for archiving. I didn't need it anymore. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Madison. I didn't pick up. A second buzz, then a third. Finally, a text. Can we talk? I was drafting a reply, something neutral, something clean, when I felt a presence at the edge of my cubicle. I looked up. Madison stood there, arms crossed tightly, color high in her cheeks. Her coral blazer looked louder than her voice, which was barely above a whisper. Grant, she began, this is all getting blown out of proportion. You and I both know you overreacted. I closed my laptop carefully. No, I reacted exactly as much as the situation required. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You dropped your work on my desk. You lied by omission. You put me and the team in a position to fail. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern. Her eyes glimmered with frustration and something like panic. That same expression people get when they realize a trick they've used too long has finally stopped working. I was overwhelmed, she insisted. You could have talked to me first. I did, I said. You ignored the calls. You ignored the messages, and then you tried to claim everything as we this morning. She flinched. For a moment she looked human, unmasked, tired, brittle. And maybe if this had happened years ago, I might have felt the urge to soften, to comfort, to carry. But people repeat what works, and I wasn't about to teach her that this still worked on me. You're being petty, she said finally, voice trembling in the ugliest way. You know this will affect my review. It already has, I replied, and you affected it yourself. She stared at me long enough that a passing coworker slowed, pretending to check a calendar on the wall. Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're enjoying this, she hissed. You like seeing me fall apart. No, I said calmly. I like seeing things land where they belong. Her breath shook. I can fix this. I can talk to Alex. I can explain. I can... You don't owe me explanations, I cut in, and I don't owe you forgiveness. There was a strange relief in saying that, like setting down a weight I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. She straightened as if bracing for impact, then nodded stiffly. Fine, she said. If you want to ruin me, congratulations. I looked her in the eyes, steady, level, unblinking. I didn't ruin you, I said. I just didn't protect you from the consequences you created. She inhaled sharply like the words themselves hit her sternum. Then she turned, heels sharp on the floor, and walked away. No scene, no final defense, just quiet defeat. By noon, everyone seemed to know something had shifted. Madison's desk was empty. The personal items were gone by early afternoon. HR schedules move fast when the evidence is neat. That evening, the office felt different, lighter, like the vents were finally circulating fresh air instead of old dust. I packed my bag, powered down my monitor, and stood for a moment in the dim glow of the exit sign. My reflection in the dark glass was just a man who'd finally drawn a line and stood behind it. As I walked out into the sharp, clean daylight, my phone buzzed with a final notification, HR's onboarding email for my new role. I didn't smile. It wasn't that kind of victory. This was the quiet kind, the kind you breathe in, not brag about. They thought I was gone. I wasn't.